Turn my mic on. Good evening. We are now going to call to order the July 8th, 2021 meeting of the Abington Township Board of Commissioners Committee of the Whole. And our first item of business this evening will be to consider a motion to approve the minutes from the Board of Commissioners Committee of the Whole meeting of June 10, 2021. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The minutes are approved. We have no formal presentations this evening, and so we move on to public comment on agenda items only. And I want to announce at the outset that there was a bit of confusion this evening about the call-in number and whether that was available to members of the public. And so if there are members of the public who were interested and arrived late, we are going to allow for a public comment period at the end of the meeting as well. But for those of you who are here, you have the opportunity to speak for up to 5 minutes on the matters before the Committee of the Whole this evening, and so I open the floor to any interested resident who has comments on the agenda.
Mike Narkowicz
is now joining.
Please come forward to the mic and state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Mr. Hecker and all members of the committee. My name is Seth Cooley. I live at 740 Washington Lane in Rydell. I'm here to comment on the agenda item pertaining to the dedication or acceptance of dedication of certain rights along Washington Lane. There's a proposed resolution as to that. I requested that agenda item, requested of Commissioner Weingrad and Manager Manfredi, that this item be adjourned because of inadequate time between notice or certainly awareness on my and various affected property owners' parts of this action, as in 2 days ago learned of it and don't have such things as the subdivision plans that are referenced as supporting the action. And I think it would benefit you all as a committee to be able to do your job of vetting this proposed item and make appropriate recommendations, et cetera, to the Board of Commissioners to have good input from stakeholders such as affected property owners. Apparently, there will be no continuance of the item, so I would just, for the record, reiterate that here this evening, but also suggest and request that the item be put on this committee's next meeting before it goes to the Board of Commissioners so that this committee can consider my, and I suspect other comments that should come in between this committee meeting and this committee's next meeting. That's sort of as to process. One other note on process, for the record, I sent a written rescission document to Manager Manfredi, and I think to you, Mr. Hecker, but have a copy here. I'll leave it with whomever. And that's preserving rights while I have an opportunity to do some diligence regarding the underlying issue of these property rights along Washington Lane. And briefly now, just for the benefit of those who may not be aware, this project has apparently been going on for some long while, but only 2 years ago did I and the affected property owners learn about it. Again, right on the eve of a public presentation meeting about it, where the whole finished project essentially was being presented, at least the concept and detailed drawings and before and after renderings, and it all came as a great surprise, and for one reason in particular, alteration of the real aesthetic feel of our entire neighborhood, including the loss of 100 trees. That was not even mentioned or considered, and the before and after rendering showed the same treescape after as before, although that's impossible. I raised the issue of trees, other neighbors chimed in and raised it, the EAC got involved, the Shade Tree Commission got involved, and finally an arborist was sent out by the township to take a look at this and came back with a tree count of 100 lost trees. This is directly at odds with all the goals of sustainability. This alters the neighborhood aesthetic, it alters property values. There are a lot of impacts that are individual to properties, but in the aggregate, this old historic section of the township, all the Jenkins home property, Newbold estate, I happen to live in one of the homes of that family. This is all going to be fundamentally altered. We're going to be a lot more like Autumn Road and open than we are a tree-covered, tree-scaped, stone-walled country road feel. There's a lot to discuss about this. No time to do it all tonight, but this is the important discussion that needs to be had and work that needs to be done with neighbors. I'm encouraged by the repeated assurances that there'll be a process here to address the concerns and work through and around as many as possible and see what balance can be found between walkability, which I and everyone recognizes the value of, and the sacrifices that have to be made at this particular unique location where the room doesn't exist to do this in a normal kind of fashion. And I'm counting on those assurances that we'll have that opportunity. Appreciate the opportunity to comment tonight.
Well, thank you for your comments and perspective. We appreciate you coming out.
After you. Okay. All right. Good evening. My name is Kristen Kuckelman. I live at 2112 Parkdale. I'm a proud resident of Ward 12. Nice to see so many friends here tonight. I have two children at Copper Beach, and most notably for this discussion, I'm a 20-year advocate for parks and open space on the local, regional, and national level, and I am chair and founder of Friends of Glenside Weldon, which is a committee of residents here in the township rebuilding the playground at the old school property. We've raised $100,000 and plan to install the playground this fall. And also, additionally, we're planting 30 brand-new trees on the property, and that's where I got introduced to the Abington Shade Tree Commission and began to understand what a group of committed citizens can do for this township and move forward priorities. And that's when I approached Commissioner Matt Vahey to form a committee of citizens on Park and Rec and get working on a solid program for this committee. Working with Rita has been an absolute pleasure, and I know many of you know her. I'm happy to see this initiative on the docket tonight. I'm asking you all to vote in favor of forming this Citizens Commission. I think we can all agree that a quality rec and park program will serve our citizens in more ways than one. There's hundreds, if not thousands, of data points on what a quality park and rec program can do for a community. Most importantly, increased home rates, healthier community, decrease in childhood obesity. It goes on and on. But that's exactly what our township needs to do, is lead this effort with data through community engagement and surveying to understand exactly what the needs are of our community. So again, I'm here to ask for you to vote approve this great committee. Let's get working on an awesome rec and park department that serves all of our citizens' needs. I've offered some leadership on this community and would love to be a part of it. I would be remiss if I didn't mention, if we don't have a certified rec and park professional in place to serve as the director, this committee's efforts will go nowhere. And the roadmap that we're going to build through outreach to our citizens, understanding that they won't need, will absolutely go nowhere. So I'm encouraging everybody to get that position filled with a certified rec and park professional who can help lead this effort in conjunction with the Citizens Commission. Thank you so much for letting me speak, and I look forward to working with all of you.
Thank you for your comments.
Good evening, Commissioners. I was at the meeting that Mr. Cooley had referenced a couple of years ago. Ed Miklo, as you all would agree, I'm sure I can't say enough about. Through his fabulous leadership, it was a real collaboration. And I feel that I'm speaking as an individual, certainly not on behalf of the EAC, but I'm sure, and I talked to our EAC chair, that we would be very, very happy to work with the whatever does develop, working with the neighbors. I'm sure the Shade Tree Commission would also. And I can understand his disappointment, his surprise with this, but I also feel assured that the township will do the right thing and try to save trees, because that's a key part of our climate action plan. I'm also very happy to hear that we are forming a comprehensive plan to look at parks and recreation and open space, and I really hope you guys approve that, because I'd like to include that as part of our climate action plan. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
How you doing? My name is Nick Pillsbury at 650 Washington Lane. And I'm here actually also in regards to the agenda item about the easements or the right of way right along Washington Lane. So I'm actually very in favor for it. I'm a resident that is impacted in that stretch of land from Autumn to Jenkintown. And we thought it was going to be done last year and all this stuff happened, but I'm one of the people that is very, very much in favor of it. I have 2 little kids who go to Abington Friends School, and we're like 2 houses away from the school. But I still have to drive there. I drive like 2 houses to drop them off. I see people walking up and down the street. I just like cringe every time I see someone walking because it's so dangerous. And I just, I would just love. I'm just thinking about imagining having a sidewalk, be able to walk into town. It just would be so great for our community. So anything I can do to show my support in favor of this, to have it passed and keep it going, I'm all for it.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
All right,
Thank you for coming out to share that perspective.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments from members of the public on this evening's agenda?
Laura Lehman, Meadowbrook, or homeowner, or whatever we're saying
We're
these days.
going back to the regular name and address.
Okay, so isn't there a law that says that we are required to give the name and address?
I don't know, but that's been past practice. What you said is fine.
We do need to know that, because on the agenda,
Let's
the
get
other
to the
meeting
substance of your
tonight
comments.
is a new rule that says that we don't have to do that, and I'm pretty sure we just came up against a law that said we did. Whether that was for Planning Commission only or from somewhere, can we ask the solicitor? Can we ask the
but
solicitor and get an answer
We will
on
ask
that?
the solicitor, but I ask you to continue with your comments.
Okay. So, one of the things that you have on your agenda is the issue with the parks. That's probably on the committee of the whole. So I'm going to run this down here. I had about 4 on each one. And you actually gave me a phone number tonight.
There was confusion. It was a mistake.
So my question on that is that why can we not have both a phone number and a Zoom going? Is there some reason we can't have a Zoom? They're doing it in other communities. I obviously am wearing this mask because I have a husband who's very susceptible if I bring something home.
Understood.
So without you providing at least the phone, but hopefully the Zoom, we wouldn't be able to attend the meetings.
Understood.
And there are many, many people in that condition. So could we please?
I'm well aware.
Okay. Have we talked about it?
Not yet.
Can we get a Zoom and a?
Well, we're not going to answer that question right here and right now, but I understand the question. And the reason we don't have it is a technological one that we're talking with the township manager about how to deal with it moving forward, but we don't yet have an answer.
Okay. So that's another issue, is not getting answers to questions as we're
I just
talking.
gave you an answer.
Well, yeah, okay. So what we want to do is we want to have any question that I ask, for instance, if the solicitor knows of a law, we'd like to have it just answered, and not the hoops that you are going to be proposing in the next meeting. Okay, so I actually have things to say about the climate change issue, that we are making one plan after another and figures and numbers and everything else while we let the trees die, while we let all of the things that we can do hands-on right now go. We've allowed, when we let Rydell Waters cut down those trees, we now have a flooding parking lot in Whole Foods. While somebody was out counting trees and making plans, and we have to stop doing that. We know what there is to do in this township. We have ad infinitum made lists of it. Now we have to get down to it and start doing the things that we can do. And part of what you're doing is just to get money. But I see how you're spending the money, okay? One way of of doing it that was for climate change was to create these cookie-cutter riparian buffers, okay, that we've talked about before. $1,200 worth of pesticides from a guy who came from Bristol to Westchester and back here and then had to go home again, the same route. Nothing sustainable about that. Those are the things that we have to cut out. And we have to actually see what it is that we are doing. Okay, so I'm going to let the rest go because I haven't studied enough, because I spent the afternoon trying to actually figure out what you were doing with the new speaking rules. That it's outrageous. It's outrageous. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any further comments from members of the audience on the agenda items this evening? If not, we will move into our unfinished business. And this is item A, and this will be a motion to reconsider at the September 9, 2021 Committee of the Whole, a resolution amending Resolution 20-039, a resolution setting forth agenda policy and proceedings for meetings of the Board of Commissioners and its committees. And so I'll take the lead, and then I'll ask Manager Manfredi to make a few comments as well. We've been talking.
A second on that?
Well, I don't know. I mean, normally we do that at the end, but we can certainly do that on the front.
I second that.
Thank you. Okay. So we've talked about this the last couple of meetings about our procedures for how this committee does its business, how the board wants to do its business moving forward. There's some good work underway, I think, to set a framework that would be, I think, viewed positively by all, but we're not quite finished yet, and we want to take the month of August, the remainder of this month, to put together a comprehensive framework that we can socialize with our colleagues and come back at the September meeting when we're not in the lull of the summer, things are coming back to life, and have a spirited discussion so that we do put together a framework that is not only comfortable, but it allows us to be more effective and efficient in what we do, and we're just not quite there yet. And so that's the reason for the nature of the motion this evening. Manager Manfredi, do you want to add to that?
I don't believe there's anything to add. I think you said it well.
Okay.
It's just a more comprehensive approach. Nothing more.
Thank you. I will open it up to the comments or questions from members of the committee. Commissioner Brodsky.
Good idea. Let's flush it out further and just move on and do the work over the summer. Good idea. I support it.
Thank you. Commissioner Myers.
I have a question. The motion says to reconsider it at the September 9th meeting. Does that mean there won't be anything at the August meeting?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I think we need to take the month of August to really delve into this. I mean, we're looking internally. We're also looking at what some of our sister municipalities do and seeing if we can come up with a framework that really achieves the goals that we've all been talking about in these discussions. And I think, we don't want to also give the appearance of trying to rush something through during the summer when we know more people will be involved in paying attention after we get past Labor Day.
So the policy that we received is just a draft, is a starting point, or?
I'll let Manager Manfredi answer that.
The policy that was under consideration that you received will be revised. So where we are today is where we are today. That draft you received will be revised again.
Because I couldn't find any changes.
Correct.
Thank you.
That's right. We're assuming it'll be revised again. That's right.
Yes. Commissioner Thompson.
I support this tonight. I am concerned because we continue to kick the can down the road on this, and I really want to make sure that we backstop this with the fact that September 9th is the meeting that we are making some sort of decision and moving this forward. I am not in support of seeing it delayed any further beyond
Understood.
September 9th.
Yeah, I'm not either. I just think that, I don't think we're ready as a group yet to have the substantive discussion necessary because we don't have the comprehensive framework, but we will. And I think by the time we hit that meeting, and we'll be ready to have that and then move it forward to the board.
Okay. Thank you.
Vice President Hecker, I think it's also important to note that part of the reason that you've expressed to me for delay is that with 15 commissioners, there are a lot of differing opinions.
That is true.
So with those differing opinions,
I'm surprised to learn that, but it's true.
with those differing opinions, new ideas and other things to look at are what's driving the delay. And the reason for the date certain Commissioner, is for that reason, that it'll be on the agenda September 9th, which would initiate discussion and likely a vote at the October meeting. So,
Yes, thank you.
Oh, October? Yeah, okay, September,
Yeah.
we kick it to full board
No,
October.
this is not the procedure.
Well, excuse me,
No.
but the
You're-
Pennsylvania law
Ms. Lehman, you're out of
allows
order, and I'm going to ask you to sit down. Ms. Lehman, you're out of order. No, Ms. Lehman, I'm going to tell you right now. No, I'm not going to let you finish. You are out of order. Sit down. No,
Township has
you are
es-
not.
The township has established speaking rules and which the commissioner is following.
Ms. Lehman, I'm asking you, before I ask for you to be removed, to please sit down. We're not going to do this. We have rules and procedures that we file, so please, no, they're not. And so that's a difference of opinion, and I'm going to ask you to sit down one last time, or I'm going to ask you to remove yourself from this meeting. Sit down, please. All right. This meeting is recessed for 5 minutes. After a brief pause, we are going to resume the Committee of the Whole meeting. Where we left off was unfinished business item A. There had been a motion and a second and comment from members of the board, so I believe we are ready to actually vote on that motion. So all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. We now move into the new business section of this evening's agenda, and the first new business item, A, is to consider a motion to waive the request for proposal requirement and to engage Witt O'Brien as consultants to the township to assure compliance with the American Recovery Plan Act and authorize the township manager to execute the appropriate engagement letter and to immediately engage and work with the consultant. And for this, I'm going to turn to Manager Manfredi.
thank you, Vice President Hecker. As you and the board know, the federal government has passed the American Recovery Plan Act. The American Recovery Plan Act has afforded the township what will eventually be, between this year and next year, over $19 million to spend in a very specific way. And there are very clear criteria about what is eligible and what is not eligible. What we need to understand is what is eligible and what is not eligible. The American Recovery Plan Act also allows for specific advice and guidance and counsel to be paid for by the Act. In looking at what we may and may not do, and looking at who else uses consulting services, Montgomery County currently uses Witt O'Brien to guide them and advise them. And in order that we can be prepared to get money as this act intends and plans as quickly as we can, but to do it the right way and with the proper guidance, I reached out to Montgomery County's chief financial officer, spoke with them, and asked about who their consultancy is, and this was who they recommended. So what we're asking for this evening is to be able to use them while we develop a request for proposals, but so that we can begin immediately trying to identify and address what is the best way to reach the people that need this money for the Board of Commissioners to consider down the road, and to have their sound advice and guidance, and more importantly, compliance with the Act.
Yep.
So we're asking to waive the process for the request for proposals through, I believe, at the end of the year. We could even start it in October if necessary, but so that we can begin immediately providing answers to commissioners and the public on how we can use this money.
Yeah, it makes sense. Thank you, Manager Manfredi. I'll open it up to the committee for comments or questions. Commissioner Myers.
Forgive me because I don't know too much about this. Obviously, we're not engaging them tonight. This would be moved to the August board meeting? for approval? Yes?
Well, yes and no. What I'm asking for this evening is for the board to approve it, to move it to the next meeting, but also to allow me to engage them immediately. So you'd be waiving the procedure for the RFP next meeting, but authorizing this meeting to utilize this firm. If the board chooses to wait a month, we can certainly do that.
I wasn't suggesting that. I'm just not seeing a cost.
Because, the costs are time and materials at their hourly rates, and I believe their rates are listed.
Oh, the chart, is that the chart?
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's on an hourly basis, depending upon what it is we ask of them and who they assign. One of the reasons that Wood O'Brien was a preferred alternative is that the experience that they have had at the county has been that they do not spend a lot of time. They have a network of firms within the firm around the country that meets regularly, so that a lot of times, just, not to pick on the legal profession, but oftentimes, there are certain specialties that perhaps there's one firm or one attorney who does this all the time, so it might take them 1 hour to do something because of their experience level, and another firm who may take 5 hours. So the hourly rate becomes a relative thing. This firm seems to have the experience, specifically with disaster recovery and other things that we thought would be able to provide us some answers more economically than some other firm, if that makes any sense.
It makes sense. I just have a concern. I know we're not approving it tonight, and I know we're just moving it, but I have a concern that we don't know what it could cost. And often in these cases, when it becomes the real motion, that we put down an amount not to exceed, because we don't know if this is $5,000 or $100,000. We don't know.
We were originally estimating that we would not exceed $25,000.
So if the motion read not to exceed $25,000, would that be acceptable?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know what the next step is.
Well,
'cause it's-
we actually haven't made a motion yet.
No,
so then
understood.
But when we do, if that's.
But I
something-
would request that when the actual motion is made, that we have a not to exceed amount.
Understood. I can say from my work in my day job at my previous employer, having dealt with the CARES Act and all of the regulatory and reporting requirements, we don't have the expertise or the bandwidth here to do it. And I think the reporting requirements are onerous. I mean, it's a good thing because we're going to be receiving significant money that will benefit our residents, but the reporting requirements are very onerous. And where I was at previously, we engaged with an outside consultant to guide us because they had expertise that we lacked. And we wouldn't want to find ourselves in a position of, inadvertently violating something that we weren't trying to violate.
I was not suggesting that in any way, shape, or form.
No, I agree. I'm just
Yeah.
underscoring why I think this is a good idea.
I just would feel, I think we would all feel more comfortable.
Sure.
If we knew it wasn't going to exceed a certain amount.
I'm not a fan of open-ended checks either. Commissioner Schreiber?
On that same thing, I agree on that it should be capped, and then we can always come back and ask for more if we need it. But does this money come out of the money that we receive?
Yes.
Okay, I thought so, but thank you.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yeah, I also agree with Commissioner Myers on this one. I think we should do a not-to-exceed amount and then require prior authorization before proceeding beyond that said amount, should we need to.
Okay.
And just to be clear with respect to the amount, the board has already established a policy of the amount of $25,000 prior to going with the request for proposals. But in discussing with the solicitor's office, they thought it would be best, because it's a contract, that we waive, that you formally waive the process before the $25,000.
Okay.
So the $25,000 is established under current policy.
Understood. So with that in mind, and hearing what Commissioner Myers and Commissioner Thompson have said, what does the motion, if someone makes it, need to sound or look like so that we do this correctly?
Well, actually, Commissioner Hecker, can I interject real quick too? Because, I think the other thing that's missing from the language in front of us tonight is that what we're agreeing to moving forward is that this is basically a stepping stone before a real
Correct.
RFP is issued. And I think, to me, it's important that we add that language into the motion as well, just to acknowledge that there will be an RFP in the future. At least that's the way I understood it anyway. You're relying on these folks to help in the interim until we develop an RFP and put the RFP out.
Correct.
Right. So I would just want to make sure.
That's understood, so if you wanted to make that clear, that's fine.
Wait,
Certainly, Commissioner Vahey.
for clarification, we are not putting an RFP out to hire a consultant,
At this time,
correct? When would we issue an RFP?
based on the discussions we just had, it would be when we hit a threshold of 25,000. So the way the policy is currently written, it says that an RFP is required for any professional service. There's exceptions for 25,000. In a solicitor reviewing it, they felt that that exception doesn't apply because there's a contract being entered into. So we put it on the agenda so that we can move forward right now with moving forward with this firm to get the answers we need.
That's fine. I was confused as to an RFP at this point in time, which is not what I understand our motion to be. Did I make that any more confusing? Did I make that more confusing?
So let me,
I think sometimes you have to be more confused until clarity arrives, so that's okay.
So what the current motion was prior to the discussion was, it was a motion to waive the request for proposal requirement, the requirement that is within our policy, to engage Witt O'Brien as consultants to the township for the purpose of assuring compliance with the American Recovery Plan Act, and to authorize the township manager to execute the appropriate engagement letter based upon what you have in your binder, and to immediately engage and work with the consultant. That language in itself does not require an RFP. What requires an RFP is when you hit that $25,000 threshold in the policy. So that's why I was using that as a threshold number with respect to Ms. Meyer's question. With respect to Commissioner Thompson saying that we should go out for an RFP, you certainly can require an RFP at any time. You do not have to waive the RFP. You can say, you know what, let's not do that, let's immediately go out and do an RFP. We can do that, but we'll be delaying how we can spend this money and getting those answers for at least 60 to 90 days, which is why we're requesting the waiver to use this firm. I can't make it any more simple, candidly.
No, I get that. I'm all for full speed ahead engaging Witt O'Brien. So that's why I was concerned about the talk of an RFP.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Vahey. Commissioner Schreiber, did you have another comment or question?
No, I just didn't understand where we were putting RFP back in here. Oh, thank you, where we were putting the RFP back in here. So we're not.
Commissioner Thompson was asking that we
Yeah.
put an RFP back in.
But we wouldn't if we're following this.
Right, the way I understand it is if we stay under the $25,000 not to exceed, rather than giving a prior authorization to expend more money, we would RFP at that point.
Yeah, so we don't need to add that at this point, that RFP part to it. We can leave it as it is, written here, as you just said it.
Right.
And we can say, I mean, if you want to add as, up to 25,000, just to
Once
make it
the-
clearer, but,
So it's really, what is your pleasure? If you want to set a $25,000 threshold, which is, as we approach that, and I don't know what it's going to be until we start digging into all of the requests and the different programs as to how much hourly, we will monitor that, and I would imagine if we aren't using them a lot, it will be probably later in the year, October, that we would come back to do the RFP. They understood that it would be no later than December 31st. That was our original target. And talking with them based on their experiences, that it would be no later than December 31st that we would engage them, which would mean that we would start the RFP process, come back to you in September or October, get authorization, authorize, do all the RFPs, and then vote in December for January. That was the original timeline that was set forth with this. Again, using that pre-established $25,000 as a threshold. When she asked, that's why I said that's the
and you
number.
feel like that's enough to get them I mean, I guess what
In my conversations with them through the end of the year, yes.
Okay. Because what would be awkward is for them to get up to the 25,000 and they have a teeny bit more work to do, so it's going to be like 30,000 now. We put it out on RFP. What are we going to give it to some other firm for that last 5,000? I mean, that's kind of crazy.
No,
But-
yeah. That's correct. We would not do that.
Okay.
Other comments or questions from members of the committee?
Vice President Hecker.
Commissioner Bolt.
Manager Manfredi, can you talk a little bit about the sense of urgency around when we think the federal government expects us to have our proverbial ducks in a row? So why the urgency of acting now, because there's an expectation that this money will hit the township at a certain time. I guess that would help support the need to sort of move forward right away. I understand all the other issues and agree. And appreciate the discussion. I just think underpinning it all is sort of a need to understand the sense of urgency because of the timing from the federal government.
I don't know that I would say there's an urgency to it. I think it's a matter of sound planning. It's July. We're beginning the budget process. We're beginning putting together the budget. There are a lot of expenses. I'll give you a for example. The technology necessary to be able to have a hybrid meeting this evening with Zoom, when we looked at originally trying to do a hybrid, because there were a lot of people who engaged throughout the pandemic through Zoom, through our Zoom webinars. The technology in here needs to be upgraded, both hardware and software, in the amount of $6,400. One of the questions we have is that an eligible expense under the American Recovery Plan Act that could be funded from that? That's what we would ask the consultant to vet for us so that we know we're complying. That should the board want to in August or September decide that, yes, that was a great enhancement to public participation and we should do that. That's just a live example of the kinds of things. There have been other commissioners who have asked, are there ways that we can utilize that money to entice and enhance economic development in certain sections of the community? Well, we're not sure if we could use it. The guidance has been coming out more and more with greater clarity, but it's still not completely clear. But the specific answer to your question, we received the $9 million. We expect the other $10 million next year, and I believe we have 4 years, if I'm not mistaken, to spend it.
So aligning it with the budget planning process is really critical. Yeah, absolutely, I agree. And looking through the CV of the company and, looking at the fact that they're working on $10 billion worth of hurricane relief here and there, and that they have niche expertise in strategy, compliance, and monitoring, I think is really important. It seems that this makes sense. I'm supportive of moving forward. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Bowe.
And just, thank you, Commissioner. And again, the reason that I looked to this firm first is that it came on the heels of Montgomery County already using them in this capacity, and they were very satisfied with them.
Are there other comments or questions? Okay, so we're at the point where we would make a motion, and I think we need to make sure we make this carefully based on the comments that have been made this evening. So
I will offer something to you and ask Solicitor Gallagher to see if she would concur or want to change it. But the original motion was to waive the request for proposal requirement and to engage Witt O'Brien as consultants to the township at a cost not to exceed $25,000 to assure compliance with the American Recovery Plan Act and authorize the township manager to execute the appropriate engagement letter and to immediately engage and work with the consultant. That's the question. Before you make that a motion.
Understood.
Or your comments, Ms. Myers?
You covered it. I'm good.
All right.
Yeah. Could I?
Is that good, Solicitor
And then
Gallagher?
Commissioner Thompson, then, once we hit that $25,000 threshold, that waiver would expire, and we would have to go for an RFP.
That works.
Right, so by policy, we don't need to add that in here because it has to happen.
Right, understood.
Okay. All right, so the manager read us some nice language. Does anybody want to say they're making that motion?
I'm happy to make that motion.
Okay, is there?
Happy to second that motion.
There we go. All right. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I think that was an aye from Commissioner Carswell. Okay, all right. So we will move forward. Now we get to item B, and this is for us to consider, a motion to consider the request of Penn State University to amend the zoning ordinance of the Township of Abington, providing for and regulation a college-university campus use in the CS Community Service District, and amending the official zoning map of Abington Township by rezoning 3 parcels from the residential low-density R1 district to Community Service District. And we would do this by taking the matter and referring it to the Planning Commission for review, and then to the full board for its consideration. And so first, I'm going to turn this over to Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you, Commissioner Hecker. As an employee of KCBA Architects, who is the architect of record on this project, I am going to recuse myself from this conversation and this vote.
Thank you, Commissioner Thompson. And with that, we have some esteemed guests this evening. A relatively new Chancellor of Penn State Abington, Dr. Doug Carpini is here, along with Mark Jonas, their legal counsel. So I'll turn it to you, Mr. Jonas.
Good evening. I'm Mark Jonas. I'm here on behalf of Penn State. Time, we've had some informal input from town. Now we go to the Planning Commission as the chair. Chancellor's here to give you an overview if you like it. Meeting, and certainly at the public hearing.
That's right.
I can waive my closing arguments. I hope.
Thank you. Welcome, Chancellor.
Thank you and good evening, and it's nice to be in person with you, so very nice to meet you all in the same space under the same roof.
Likewise.
But as Mr. Jonas says, as I've been here for 6 months, I've reviewed the process to date. Penn State started the process in 2014 with the conclusion of their master plan. There have been a number of feasibility studies, traffic studies, and we're looking forward to working with the township, working through the process, and moving forward with hopefully creating new academic space on our campus. We have not had a new academic building on campus since 1973, and we're looking forward to state-of-the-art classrooms to accommodate our existing students. So I thank you for your letting me speak tonight, and look forward to engaging with the commissioners, with the planning board, and with the community on this project.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So I'll make a few comments, and then I'll open it up for my colleagues, any comments or questions they have. So one of the overarching concerns of the neighbors previously had been the original proposal included 2 properties that were on the other side of the street on Cloverly Lane, and there was some concern on the neighbors about that move. That is actually no longer in the proposal. That has been taken off the table. And so this really is a focus on providing some text amendments and changing the map to allow for the construction of the building at the location on their property that they want to build the property. Build the building. And so Mr. Jonas spoke to the number of neighbor meetings. The Chancellor held an informal meeting with the neighbors recently, and in follow-up to that, actually last week at the request of several neighbors, I held an online review with those folks who live on School Lane and Cloverly Lane about the plans. And, you know, there are the usual and customary questions about construction and where the equipment is going to be stored when the work is not underway. But the Chancellor has been an outstanding partner in working to address and listen to the neighbors' concerns. And based on the feedback that I received from the folks at the most recent meeting, including some who were, I would say, among the most concerned neighbors, I think it is appropriate for this to move forward as it's being discussed this evening. So with that, I will open it up for any comments or questions from my colleagues. Commissioner Zappone.
Okay, just one question. Commissioner Hecker. So all the issues from the residents there have been resolved? So I'm sure you met with them several times.
The largest issues have been resolved. There will be a formal land development process, and I'm sure there will be questions or concerns that come up along that way, but there will be multiple points for the public to participate in that. But I would say what I would call the existential concerns of the neighbors, I think seem to have been addressed by the Chancellor's approach.
Okay, good job. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? President Spiegelman.
Vice President Hecker, I'd be happy to make the motion as you carefully laid it out.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
All right, I got to wait to do the opposed because I don't know if you count, I don't know what column we count that in. We're going to consider that an aye. So I think we're good to go. All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank
I'm
you.
not opposed.
You're doing great, Commissioner Rothman.
Okay, thank you. We'll now move on to item C under new business, and this is a motion to consider approving the second amended land development application LD-2105 Rydal Waters allowing for pickleball courts, and I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Hassan.
Thank you, Vice Chair Hecker. This project, this tract of land actually has been in front of the board a couple of times before tonight. The first time it was for a residential proposal. The second time they came in back in 2020 for an amendment of a couple of units, and now it is before you tonight. And under this application, the applicant is proposing to remove a total of 4,000 square feet building units located where the pickleball court is going to go. And then replace it with so the existing buildings are 4,000 square feet roughly. The pickleball court is 4,352 square feet. There is also a part of this application, a 316 square foot storage building with attached restrooms and associated walks. The project has been in front of the Planning Commission back on May 25th, 2021, and they received a recommendation to move forward to the board. They received 4 variances under this application. There are no waivers proposed under this application. We had listed some waivers, but these waivers were obtained back under the initial land development approval. We had gone through a couple of revisions with the applicant during our review process. It really is a clean review. I do have a couple of comments, and I would like for the applicant or their counsel, Mr. Kerr, when they come up, if they would go on record and state that I have a zoning comment. Because the project abuts a residential unit, they are required by ordinance to supply a low-intensity buffer. It is something achievable. We have looked at it. We just want them to go on record and say that they can and they will. Other than that, there are other minor comments through our review letter. Nothing is major, and we are recommending the board's consideration of this application. I'll answer any questions you have for me.
Thank you, Mr. Hassan. Are there any questions for him? Apparently not.
If I may ask.
Certainly.
Mr. Kerr? Yes. Regarding one of the zoning comments that we referenced, it is specifically comment number 1 on the 3rd page of our review regarding the low-density buffer. Are you able to meet that requirement?
Yes, we are. I'm William Kerr. I'm the attorney on behalf of...
Yeah, just speak into the mic, yeah.
Is that better?
That's much better.
William Kerr, I'm the attorney for Rydal Waters, and we can comply with that requirement that we install that low-density buffer. Okay?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay. No comments or questions? All right, so do we have a motion to approve?
Motion.
Is there a second? All right, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Before I go to,
Aye.
see, Commissioner Rothman?
I think I was blended in, so.
Okay,
yeah,
thank you.
also
Just
aye.
wanted to make sure. So, all right, any opposed? The matter will move forward. Thank you. We move on to item D, and this is a motion to consider a resolution of an offer of dedication on 646, 650, 700, 702, 706, 722, 730, 740, 748, and 760 Washington Lane, and 1404 and 1405 Autumn Road. And I'm going to turn this over to Solicitor Gallagher.
Thank you, Commissioner Hecker. As is in your packets this evening is a resolution that we prepared. This was a land development from back in the 1950s that involved dedication of a right-of-way, and so this is accepting dedication of that right-of-way. And I do believe that Mr. Clark is here to answer any additional questions that the board may have.
Okay. Let me first, Commissioner Weingrad, do you want to make any comments before we?
No, I think it's important that solicitor explain to everybody what's going on here.
Sure. This is, as I said, this is a project that it was initially took place in the 50s, and there was a dedication of a right-of-way as part of that project. The offer of dedication was not formally accepted by the township, so this is a formal acceptance of the dedication, which will allow the other project for the Abington-Jenkintown stormwater project to proceed.
I mean, is it possible that maybe Mr. Clark can throw up a map, maybe, and we can show everybody what we're talking about here?
Yeah, I think there is a plan that shows the area in question.
Okay. All right, so let's get our bearings here. Where's Washington Lane?
It's off of Valley Road, Commissioner Weingrad.
This is Washington Lane here. The oldies right-of-way was 33 feet. In the 50s, the farm land was subdivided, and they had to provide an additional 8.5 feet on the subdivided part. So now we have 25 feet. So it will run up in the direction towards Alton. That land was subdivided, met with the township right-of-way requirements. However, it was never followed through then, officially recording.
Right, the dedication was never accepted by the township, but it was offered by the developer.
And so now it's going to be officially recorded?
Correct.
And the right-of-way is going to go up to the property lines of those homeowners on
The
Autumn and
property
Washington?
lines now read to that line, which is the 25-foot.
So it's formalizing what the township already has in terms of a right-of-way?
Correct.
Okay. I mean, I'm in favor of this moving forward to the Board of Commissioners, and I know that we've heard from one resident. But whether or not this, correct me if I'm wrong, but whether or not this Abington-Jenkintown connection project goes forward, this is something that the township has to do because it's the township's right-of-way?
Correct, and once we realize that it was never formally accepted, we are advising that the township take that formal action.
Okay. And for that reason, I would support this going through the Board of Commissioners. If there's any problems with the residents, they can have them come in, we can continue. Again, this is the beginning of the vetting process, not the end of the vetting process. So if anybody finds any issues or has any questions or comments, you can come to us, to the board, either the next month or during the month in order to do so, and you'd be happy to entertain questions?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Commissioner Weingrad, we also indicated that we would be sending letters next week. If the board does in fact decide to move it for a vote at the full board, we will send letters to each affected property owner so they are aware, so nothing would be happening without their knowledge.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. And I would amend this motion to include so that that notice can be sent out to all those homeowners that are abutting this right-of-way. Just so not that it's legally necessary, but we're doing this out of the abundance of caution so everybody knows what's going on.
And just so everyone is aware and has an opportunity to be heard.
All right. I appreciate that. So I would so amend.
Okay, I'll need my procedural experts to help me through that, but point taken.
Okay.
Other comments or questions from members of the committee? Okay, so the way this agenda item read was a motion to consider a resolution. And so I don't think we've made that hasn't been moved and seconded, so.
Correct.
So so from a procedural standpoint, Commissioner Weingrad would like to amend this, how do we do that?
Certainly. So it would be a motion to consider a resolution of an offer of dedication on 646, 650, 700, 702, 706, 722, 730, 740, 748, and 760 Washington Lane, and 1404 and 1405 Autumn Road, and direction to the township staff to send notice to all affected property owners prior to next month's meeting.
Okay. Would you like to make
And
that?
so
motion?
moved.
Okay. It's been moved. Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, we've heard from Colorado. Any nay? Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. We're moving on to item E, and this is to consider a motion authorizing the township manager and solicitor to research and prepare an amendment to the township's open burning ordinance permitting recreational fire pits. And I'm going to turn this to Manager Manfredi on behalf of Commissioner DiPlacido, who has been spearheading this discussion.
Thank you, Vice President Hecker. Yes, Commissioner DiPlacido some time ago had a number of residents who felt that recreational fire pits was a topic that should be reconsidered by the board. The commissioner wanted to begin the discussion now with the board and start the process so that the solicitor can work on what the legal implications might be. I've already begun talking to the Director of Fire and Emergency Services, as well as the Fire Marshal, on what their thoughts are, because this is a topic that has history, as you all know, and is not a simple one. But Commissioner DiPlacido felt strongly that the discussion should occur. So he asked that we begin it now so that we can do the research, solicitor, myself with the township management, to come back with recommendations to you in August. And whether you take action in August or in September, but to at least start the process now.
So this would come back to the Committee of the Whole?
Come back to the Committee of the Whole in August. We would take all of the information from staff, provide that to Commissioner DiPlacido, and of course, it would be part of the meeting binder as well.
Thank you. That's helpful. Commissioner Sapone.
I have a question for the fire marshal. John, isn't the current ordinance, doesn't that state it has to be, these fire pits have to be 10 feet from a structure? I know I'm almost sure that's what we have, and I know a couple other townships, it's the same thing.
The current township policy does not list any clearances for a fire pit. Recreational burns are prohibited, so that was never included. The only reference to clearances is with barbecues or chimneys. They would be 10 foot from any combustible material.
Okay, thanks, John.
Other comments or questions? President Spiegelman.
Thank you, Vice President Hecker. I know there's plenty of folks here who were around when this burning ordinance was first adopted. It was a rather tortured process, and I know both prior and subsequent to the adoption, I had a lot of residents approach me with significant consternation about the fact that that fire pits were basically prohibited or were not authorized, as Fire Marshal Rohr just explained. In recent years, honestly, ever since the state allowed the much wider and louder variety of fireworks, many people have come to me and said, so the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania allows for these ridiculous fireworks, but we can't even have a simple fire pit. So I absolutely understand Commissioner DiPlacido's impetus in raising this topic, and I am very supportive of this because there's definitely a lot of frustration out there, and a lot of folks just want to be sort of treated like grown-ups and sit with their little fire pit. Thank you.
Thank you, President Spiegelman. Other comments or questions from Commissioner Brodsky?
So as I understand the motion, it's basically allowing the township manager and the solicitor the authority to kind of research this, do their homework, figure out what some solutions may or may not be without actually coming to the merits of the final conclusion at this point. But I think it's reasonable to do your homework first before anything takes place, and I would support that. So do your research, figure out what it is, figure out what is and what isn't acceptable, and then we can move forward from there. So I think Commissioner DePlacido's request to research the issue and evaluate it, it's reasonable, and I would support it.
Thank you, Commissioner Brodsky. Other comments or questions?
Question.
Commissioner Myers.
When is the next fire board meeting? Because I know it's September. Is this something that you would consider taking to the fire board before bringing back to the commissioners?
Commissioner DePlacido wanted this on this meeting to go to the August meeting. It's really more a question for him. I mean, I'm standing in for him because he couldn't be here this evening. The request of us was to ask the board for a month to do the research. I don't feel comfortable answering for him.
I understand. Mr. Chairman, the reason that I bring this up is no matter what, and I know that people want fire pits, and I know lots of people have fire pits, but nevertheless, we have a all-volunteer strong fire department, and I don't think that any of us would want to do anything that would not be in agreement with them. And if it's possible, and I understand that you're working with the fire marshal, and fire marshal, if there's a way in that month for you to go back to the 5 fire companies, I think it's really important to have their say, their input in this.
No, I think it's
And
perfectly
Commissioner
reasonable.
Myers, if I may, Commissioner
may.
Hacker, you know, Mr. McEnany in his new role works with the fire chiefs on all occasions, so he would also be at the table with John. So between the two of them, I think one of the things that they would do is reach out to the fire companies.
I certainly did not mean to exclude.
No, I don't mean it that way. My point is that that's part of what they do now. So I have every confidence that in this month that that's what they will be doing. I just wanted to give you that assurance.
And that's why I asked for fire board. That's.
So Commissioner Schreiber was asking, so the intent would be that this would come back to the committee of the whole in August before it would go to the full board. So I don't know when the fire board meets and how that relates. September. Yeah, but how that relates to the September board meeting, if it occurs before or after. But
Well, what the agenda item is in front of you, and what was requested by Commissioner DePlacido was to begin the process now.
Yeah.
For us to begin.
Yep.
So let's just say we walk through what his vision was. We would, if this would get passed in August, we would have time, obviously, to do some research now. If the board votes in August, because again, this is for initial discussion, no action will be taken. It doesn't become official until next month.
well, let me clarify. I thought we said this was coming back to the committee of the whole in August.
In August.
So then it wouldn't get to the board until September.
September.
Correct.
Correct.
And the question I had was, how does the September Board of Commissioners meeting align with the September Fire Board meeting?
Oh, that I don't know. John, I'd have to ask.
Isn't it usually the third Monday? I think it's after.
So it's after,
I think it's
okay.
after.
So then we would align with the process that you've described with the fire marshal and Mr. McEnany engaging the 5 fire companies.
Well, yes.
Okay. Commissioner Bowman.
I don't want to delay it. The ordinance has to change, it's clear, and I don't think it's any disrespect to any of our volunteer firefighters to delay it or to seek their fire board opinion. We have, John is here. He's going to be part of the process. So I wouldn't be in favor of any delay.
Okay. Other comments or questions? Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to move this to the next Board of Commissioners meeting. Or sorry, to authorize the committee of the whole to, and in the meantime, to research best practices in amending
I'll second
the
the
current
motion.
ordinance.
I'll second this motion.
I think we're in general alignment, okay. So it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the matter moves forward. Item F is a motion to authorize the creation of a comprehensive recreation, park, and open space plan advisory committee, and for this, I'm going to turn to Commissioner Vahey.
Thank you, Vice President Hecker. So I'm really excited to sponsor this resolution tonight, or motion. You heard from one of my residents, Ms. Kugelman, speak earlier, and I've been very proud of the work I've done with the Friends of Leadside Weldon, raising $100,000 to rehabilitate that playground in my ward. But it begs the question, why do we have to raise $100,000 to rebuild a playground in my ward? I think, I ran because ran for this office because I was really interested in improving the parks and recreation services in our township. And I see this as a vehicle to move that forward and identifying these, empty spaces without adequate park facilities or recreational facilities. So it's important to have this plan in place so we can decide where investments can be made and where improvements are needed. So I'm looking forward to this, looking forward to working with this committee. The one thing I would ask to change from what's in front of you tonight is right now the committee is set up of 7 residents. I think it would be beneficial to have 2 appointees in addition to that, so in a total of 9 people, 1 being designated from the Environmental Advisory Committee and 1 being appointed by the Shade Tree Commission. I think it's important to have their vast experience at the table, but keeping those 7 additional residents involved as well.
Thank you, Commissioner Vahey. I'll open this up to comments or questions from the committee. Commissioner Thompson.
I wholeheartedly support this initiative. I think it's a great thing for the township. I just want to challenge Manager Manfredi while this is moving forward to maybe help us find a new director of parks and open space to kind of help shepherd this process along so that that committee can hit the ground running as they move forward.
As I've mentioned to the board members, with the promotion of Mr. Clark, Mr. Jones into their director roles, and without going out and hiring a director of engineering with the inside promotions, we are accelerating the search for a Parks and Recreation director because we do have the funds available, and that ad will actually be out on Monday.
That's great. Thank you. Other comments? Commissioner Myers.
Question, and I'm sorry, if this is in the paperwork, I just went to a black screen, so. This is not exclusive to one ward. This is township-wide.
It's a township-wide initiative.
And this would be a combination of commissioners and residents? What's the makeup of the advisory committee?
So
What's being proposed?
with everybody's consent, I would like to chair the committee and then appoint 6 other members from the township, residents from the township to serve on the committee. And then my proposal is to add to that 2 additional members, 1 to be appointed by the Shade Tree and 1 to be appointed by Environmental Advisory Committee. Ideally, of the membership of those committees so that we have their knowledge base at the table.
But there would only be 1 commissioner on the committee.
That's the plan, but of course, I'd
No,
welcome you
I'm
to
just asking.
participate.
Yeah, because I'm sure that you'll want residents from all over the township so that all areas are.
That's absolutely critical.
Okay.
Yeah, I do enjoy appointing as many Ward 12 residents to our boards as possible, but I don't think this committee would benefit from having, 6 people from Glenside. I do think it needs to be from every corner of the township. But it's not specified in the policy, that they need to be distributed, but I can say it's be my commitment to make sure that happens, and I would not be satisfied if I don't have anybody from Willow Grove or nobody from Elkins Park. I think we need to have people from every reach of the township so that, the idea being, I'm identifying a black hole of recreation in my ward. How are we going to identify those areas in Ward 2 if no one from Ward 2 or 1 are there to say where they are?
That was my point.
Yeah.
That was my point. Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner,
Commissioner Ball.
I think I'd like to commend Commissioner Vey for his thought leadership here, and I also think, germane to the conversation that was just had, it's important to point out that the goal would not just be to identify volunteers who were representative of across the township, but the goal would be also, as pointed out in section 1.1, to find people who had particular expertise in parks, recreation, and open space. So it would not just be necessarily finding people from across the township, but really trying to find engaged volunteers who could contribute thought leadership based on their either professional experience, volunteer leadership, or the same. And I think we saw from Ms. Kugelman tonight that those people are out there. So I am really enthusiastic. I want to congratulate Commissioner Vahey for bringing this to us today and absolutely support it. Thank you.
Commissioner Schreiber.
I'm trying to see this, this might be answered in here, but is there a process to appoint the people to that committee? They have to have certain expertise, and by the way, I agree with you about the shade tree and the EAC, but how are we picking who's on the committee?
So it's, I think we need to solicit as a board residents from our wards who would be interested in participating. There's no formal process in there to how that would occur. I do think we need a resolution down the line to make the appointment. Or am I missing something?
Well, no, what you just described, what was written in here is that the president would appoint a chair. Commissioner Vahey is asking to be that chair, and the chair of that committee would recommend to the Board of Commissioners. So what Mr. Vahey's saying, that process is what, if he were selected as the chair as he's asking to be, that's what he would do. So that would be the process. Just to be clear.
So if we had somebody from, if I had somebody from my ward, I would give the name to you and you would vet them to see if they had the right expertise or that you're looking for or whatever.
Correct.
Yes.
Commissioner Vahey, so I wholeheartedly support this. My question, I think, dovetails on this. So our last item of business this evening is to talk about a new approach to how we appoint people to the volunteer boards and commissions. Should this be part of that, or you really envision this being a separate process?
I had not envisioned that being part of the more formal process.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't feel strongly one way or the other, so if the majority would like to see that fold into the more formal process, I'm fine with it. My only concern is, we want to get started right away.
No, that's why I'm
And I don't
asking.
want to delay, finding people
Right.
to populate the board.
That's fair.
This is a one and done thing, right? Am I right about that? It's
It
not
is
an
sunset.
ongoing, like the volunteer boards are ongoing. This is
I
just,
think I missed that. So that's actually, I think that actually speaks to laying out the process in the way that you've
Yeah, the
done.
charge to the committee would be to create a plan
Right.
by December of '22.
Okay. Yeah, I would concur with your approach. Okay, other comments or questions? So we don't actually have a formal motion, so I'll ask Commissioner Vahey if you'd like to make that motion.
I would move to send the proposal to create a comprehensive recreation park and open space plan advisory committee to the August Board of Commissioners meeting.
Thank you. And I'm sure everybody's going to want a second to this, so all together now? Second? Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 I don't think I need to ask if there are any opposed, but I will do so for the record. Any opposed? None. All right, good job, Commissioner Vahey. All right, item G, and this is for us to consider approving the installation of stop signs as experimental on Cedar Lane at Hamel Avenue, Cricket Avenue at Jefferson Avenue, Grovania Avenue at Pembroke Avenue, and Jefferson Avenue at Maple Avenue. And for this, we're going to turn to Lieutenant Quinn. Sure. I think we've met him once or twice before.
So I'm going to bring Al up. He's much more informed on these matters. If you'll answer any questions that
Sure.
you have.
Thank you, Lieutenant. Good evening, Officer Freed.
All right, I guess the proposal is to put in experimental stop signs at the intersections listed there. the police administration wouldn't have any problem with doing that. There is one intersection that the traffic safety unit wasn't asked to look at, which we will do, seeing that it's on the list here. But we're good with the proposal.
Okay. Do members of the committee have any questions about this? Commissioner Zabel?
I just want to make a comment.
Sure.
I just want to commend Officer Freed, for all his hard work on working closely with me on Maple Avenue and Tyson Avenue. They're out there constantly for enforcement on Tyson, and I just want to thank you very much. I spoke to Officer Mike today, and he's taking care of 2 other issues up there. So thanks for all the hard work. I really appreciate it.
Not a problem, Commissioner. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioner Zappone. Any other comments or questions? All right, so do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Okay. It has been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And I think we lost Commissioner Carswell briefly, so, all right. Any opposed? The matter is approved. I'm going to have to take a deep breath. This is a
Would you like me to stay up here for H?
I would love to. Thank you very much. It might be about 5 minutes before I get done reading this thing, so hold on. We're going to consider a motion authorizing advertisement of an ordinance amending Chapter 156, Vehicles and Traffic, Article 2, Traffic Regulations, Section 9, One-Way Highways Established, Section 11, Turns at Intersections, Section 14, Stop Intersections, and Article 3, Parking Regulations, Section 25, Parking Prohibited at All Times, No Parking Between Signs, No Parking Here to Corner, Parking Prohibited except certain hours, No Stopping or Standing, Section 28, Special Purpose Parking Zones to add one-way signs on Edge Hill Road, left and right turn prohibited signs on northbound and southbound Bradfield Road, stop signs on Crescent Avenue at Fortune Road, Seminole Avenue at Montgomery Avenue, Woodland Avenue at Menlo Avenue, Silver Avenue at Parkview Avenue, Hunter Road at Woodland Road, and Amity Road. No parking signs on the 2500 block of Rubicam Avenue. No parking here to corner signs on Cleveland Avenue, Cypress Avenue, Chester Avenue, and Corinthian Avenue. No parking between signs on Miriam Avenue. Handicap parking signs on Shellmeyer Street and Clemens
Mike
Avenue.
Narkowicz.
Is now exiting.
Thank you for your attendance. All right, I'll turn this over to you, sir.
Okay, the one note I will bring up in this long list here, all the things that were on this ordinance proposal were looked at by the Traffic Safety Unit. The 3 items, the one-way signs on Edge Hill Road and the left and right turn prohibition for north and southbound Bradfield Road, we're just adding the ordinance for those. They were put in as part of the Edge Hill Tyson Avenue project.
Gotcha.
So we just need to put an ordinance in for those 3 items.
That makes sense. Thank you. Are there any comments or questions? Commissioner Bowman, please don't ask me to reread the agenda.
And where are they at on Bradfield? Where's no left turn and no right turn?
It's on north and southbound Bradfield Road on the approach to Edge Hill. One's on the Burger King side and the other one's on what would be the north side there.
Oh, right.
Because Edge Hill Road is now one way
Gotcha.
between Jenkintown and Easton, so.
Sure. All right. Thanks.
Commissioner Blunt.
I just want to say thank you because since
Is now
COVID, for some
joining.
strange reason, people now park on the 2500 block of Rubicam on the opposite side of the street, and everybody that lives on my side of the street can't back out because there's cars blocking our driveways. So that's just my comment.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? So do we have a motion?
Motion.
Motion, second? Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? The matter is approved. Item I, this is a motion to authorize the board president to confirm the nominations for the Roslyn Fire Company Special Fire Police, and for this, I'm going to turn to Mr. McEnany.
Good evening, everybody. The request that we're making is Roslyn Fire Company has 2 members that wish to become appointed as fire police officers for their fire company. And by statute, Pennsylvania statute, that is required to be confirmed by the president and the Board of Commissioners. Just as a little bit of background, the way fire police are joined or selected by the fire company, they go through the same background checks, the same drug testing that every other firefighter in the township goes through. And the reason that they have to get board approval is, as fire police officers, they are allowed to have traffic control duties, which I believe is controlled by the state, so that's why. They have to, after tonight, once it's signed off upon, they have to then go get sworn by a district justice.
I see. Okay, that's helpful. Yeah, thank you. Any comments or questions for Mr. McEnany? Okay.
Are there any budget implications to this?
None, they're volunteer.
Thank you. So do we have the motion?
Motion.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second. Okay. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion passes. Thank you. Item J, and this is to consider a motion to approve a resolution authorizing the extension of the agreement for recycling services with J.P. Mascaro and Sons dated November 20, 2021, for an additional period of 6 months with certain price changes for certain services. And for this, we're going to call Mr. Jones.
Good evening, Commissioners.
Good evening.
What we have here is right now we're in the process of reviewing 2 draft RFPs for our recyclables. One of the RFPs is for the collection and transportation of the recycling that we pick up at curbside, and the other one will be for the processing at the end at the recycling plant. The timeline for this process will exceed the existing 6-month extension that we're working under right now. So what we're asking for is an additional 6-month extension. We hope to only use half of that extension and have a new contract in place by the end of that time. So that's what you'll be looking at here.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Jones. Comments or questions? Commissioner Behe.
Mr. Jones, we've been through several, I think there's a lot of moving pieces right now, right? Because there's the lease. And was there also something with a regular trash collection? It seems like there's a lot of contracts up, and I'm just not sure where they all fit in place.
The last one was the trash transfer station.
Okay.
And that was with Covana.
Okay.
And that one, we're in a 5-year contract with them right now, but that was a long process.
Right.
And then as that contract was signed, we started to get near the end of the contract for the recyclables. The recycling transfer station, just so everybody understands where it's at, is across the street from our trash transfer station right next to the wastewater treatment plant.
So I'm remembering a presentation from Mr. Maxwell when he went through different numbers. That was for the
trash transfer. And the RFPs are set up similar to the RFPs that went out then. They're asking for it to be broken up in 3 different segments within the 2 RFPs to try to get the most bang for our buck.
All right, thank you. You guys are pretty busy.
Mr. Jones, when you refer to they, explain that, who the they are that's going through this process.
This is a consortium of 7 municipalities that surround Abington Township. And Mr. Maxwell and our office manager, Lisa Urquhart, sit on the committee that's looking into all the RFPs and putting this out to bid.
Makes sense. Thank you for that. Commissioner Spone.
A quick comment.
Yeah, sure.
I just want to thank Mike for taking care of that issue on Penn Avenue expeditiously. Thank you very much. You made that resident very happy. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions? I'll entertain a motion.
Motion.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. Commissioner Behe.
Just for clarity,
Yeah.
we're moving to send these directly to the Board of Commissioners. I think we haven't been saying that, so I just want to make sure.
No, I think that's important to underscore that. I mean, I think we know that implicitly, but yeah, the idea is that we're approving this to move forward to the Board of Commissioners for final adoption. Thank you. So that's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? The matter will move forward. And we now reach our last item of business for this evening. This is to consider a motion to adopt a resolution on a policy for appointments to the various boards, committees, commissions, and councils. And for this, I'm going to turn to Commissioner Carswell.
Okay, good evening. Can I just check to make sure you can hear me all correct?
We can hear you, yes.
Great. Well, here's me calling in from Colorado. And thank you all for your patience. It's not easy to be on a conference call. I imagine it's a little frustrating and comical at times for everyone in the room. So thanks for that. It feels like a year and a half ago, but it's hard to keep track of time at this point. I chaired, we'll call it an ad hoc committee to recruit, interview, and put together a slate of volunteers from our township for the boards, committees, commissions, and councils. This is, anything from our zoning hearing board to the Environmental Advisory Council. It's a really fun role. It is a lot of work, and the last time we all discussed this, we were discussing postponing the process so that we could do some review of it. I was not in favor of that because I didn't understand why we were postponing it, and I wanted to make sure that we were actively engaged as a commissioner board in recruiting the talent from within our township to step up and serve in these important volunteer roles. I don't think a lot of people in the township realize that people serve on these boards for as much as 5-year terms, and for many people, they serve for far more than 5 years because they stay engaged on their various board or committee. So we made some minor changes to the policy. That is in the packet and highlighted specifically so you can see what adjustments were made. Most importantly, we wanted to add a first step of engaging people who are up for, at the end of their term, or if you would say up for renewal, engage them in the process in I would say a better way, so that we could ask them about their interest to continue to serve, ask them about what's working, what skills and values are needed on these various boards, but that also have a process of engaging the chairs and then posting open spots when they are officially confirmed open and recruiting a new wave of volunteers. So with that said, I'm going to actually ask if you have any questions, please feel free to ask myself or Commissioner Spiegelman or Township Manager Manfredi, because the three of us worked on the adjustments to this policy.
With that, I will open it up for questions. Commissioner Schreiber.
So I think it's a great idea to have a timeline in place, because we have gotten over the years, as we experienced this last time, where we kind of got, to the end of the year, all of a sudden we realized, and, we got kind of caught up in that and had to put things off. So I do think a timeline is a great idea. I'm kind of hesitant of the timeline that has been put into this, though. I guess it is a good idea to start early and to ask the current person or people that are in there if they want to continue. The part that I think might get a little iffy, I guess. So if you're asking somebody in July 1st to, if in July 1st, I'm sorry, you're going to schedule people that are already in that position, I believe. Is that correct? And then, so that on July 1st, and then they're going to be interviewed by July 31st. And then in August, you interview. I guess I'm questioning why we're not interviewing everybody at the same time. There's about 6 weeks in between. You're going to interview the incumbent, and then like another 6 weeks goes by, and you're interviewing anybody else. That seems like a really long period of time, and you wouldn't even necessarily remember the people, what the person said in the original interview. So that's one of my questions. I have some others, but if you want to address that first.
Commissioner Carswell, do you want me to answer that, or do you want to answer that?
Yeah, I'll start. I will admit it is a little hard to hear, but I think I understand the gist of the question is a little bit more focused on the timeline and specifically why extending it, starting so early with it. Commissioner Shriver, you're completely right. We needed to start earlier because we were often in the previous model running right up to the calendar year end, and of course holidays and other things that just sort of complicate the process. Part of the reason why I thought we should start as early as the summer was that I thought it would be important to engage with the individuals who are up for renewal in a process that felt respectful to the fact that they have already served these positions. What we've done historically is they were treated as candidates for the seats equal to those who are candidates. And that's fit well with a lot of our long-term volunteers. I had some conversations, again, two cycles of this process with chairs of the various boards and committees, and there was definitely some feedback that was negative about putting existing volunteers through that same process. And I think there's some real in treating that first stage as a way for those of us who are new to the board, and I will point out there are several of us who are newer than some of these people who've served for 5 or more years, to get a chance to engage with them and understand some of the mechanics of the committees that they serve on. So to see us do that thoughtfully and respectful of their service, but also give us enough room to, to be honest, to look at whether or not we need to open up seats when people's tenure comes up. And to be able to do that through a conversation with those people instead of a decision without those people. Township Manager Manfredi, can you speak further on that?
I still don't understand. I'm sorry. I heard part of what you said, Jessica, so I'm trying to get it, but I don't really understand. We're only kind of hearing some of what you're saying, but I still don't understand why there's like a 6-week gap between when the incumbent is interviewed, or more than 6 weeks. It might be, I guess, more like 2 months. By the time the people don't come in until September to be interviewed. So, yeah.
So let's just there's actually 3 processes within the process. One specific to if it's an EAC or shade tree. One specific to if someone leaves prior to their term expiring, and you're focused on the section that is if someone's term is expiring, for example, in January of 2022. This process would require of me to send a letter to those people whose terms by June 1. And then interviews with those people whose terms are expiring would occur by July 31. And then you're setting up, once you go through all of that, then you advertise and open it up to everyone else. So all I could say is if you're questioning why would we open it up to everyone else after incumbents, that's a policy decision as to whether or not you want. I thought she described what her rationale was for doing that. The question is, do you all agree?
So is it like a thumbs up or thumbs down, and we're making a decision then? Is that what you're saying?
Well, it's silent as to what you tell those people. So let's just say hypothetically there are 2 members on a board that's expiring in January of 2022. And they get their notices in June, and they respond and say, we would like to be reappointed. And the advisory committee schedules interviews with them. They conclude those interviews by July 31. What gets communicated to those people at that time is, we are opening these seats up to others, or it could be whatever you decide it to be. It's silent as to what gets communicated to those people who have been interviewed. This is silent to that. That's really going to be either the interview committee's decision, or perhaps the interview committee will come back to you. It's
You
silent.
being the board?
The
Or you
board.
being
Yeah,
the
board. Correct.
And saying, yes, we are going to open this, no, we're not going to open this? Or is it always getting opened to other people?
That's going to be up to what is, I would imagine, what the committee decides. The only thing that this is establishing is a process that allows for incumbents to be interviewed first before it's opened up to the public. And Ms. Carswell described her rationale in recommending that.
And then the committee is deciding if it's going to get opened, or all of the commissioners are going to decide if it's going to be opened
That's
up
part
to
of the
others?
discussion this evening. So if you think that you'd want to make a recommendation that addresses that point, now would be the time to amend this to say that. What this is saying is they interview by July all incumbents who have indicated they want to be retained. It's silent as to what gets communicated to them before you begin the process of advertising for that same vacancy. And what I thought I heard her say is that because of people who have been on there for a long time, as a courtesy to them, they would receive letters far enough in advance so they weren't surprised by a vacancy, that they read it in the paper, like, why am I having to reapply? I've been here for some time. So it was really, from my understanding from her intent, was to give incumbencies the first right to be interviewed, and then determine, whether or not that committee is going to determine that they should or should not be reappointed and come back to the Board of Commissioners. That's not in here. If you want to add that to this process, now would be the time to add that.
Okay. So I would like to, I mean, I don't think it should be, I don't know how many people are on the committee or who's even choosing who's on this committee, but I don't think it should be up to, 4 or 5 people if this is going to get opened up to other people or not. So I think that would be, so I would like to add that. And I might have other questions, but go ahead. I'm sure other people do too, so.
I just want to make sure, Commissioner Carswell, did I adequately describe your intent?
I think that you did. Speaking to what Commissioner Schreiber just said, the process so far, prior to what we're discussing today, has been that the group that does this, the committee that does this interviewing process, does the process, shares access to all of the interviews via, Dropbox or however we do it this year, and then presents a slate to the board for approval. I would absolutely welcome anyone participating in the process. I think the whole idea for me is that we should be more engaged in this. We shouldn't just greenlight people through. We shouldn't just, assume whatever. We should be engaged in considering these people, because these people serve longer terms than we do. I think it's important that we really put thought and effort into recruiting people from our township to serve in these roles, and that we stay engaged in the process when it comes time to consider renewing people or recruiting new people.
President Spigler.
All right. Thank you, Vice President Hecker. Just to throw in just an extra 2 cents. Certainly, Commissioner Carswell and Manager Manfredi explained this well, but one of the issues I know, having discussed this with Commissioner Carswell, one of the issues of consternation in the past iteration of these committees has been that I think there was an assumption. I think there was assumption on the part of some commissioners, assumption on the part of some volunteers and volunteer boards that appointment was, once someone was appointed, they basically served until they didn't want to serve anymore, and that took out of the equation the fact that the members of these boards, committees, and commissions serve at the pleasure of the board, and and do need feedback, that extra long period will allow not only for communication with the incumbents, including, frankly, if there's a case where an incumbent is told, look, thank you for your service, but like the Eagles say when changing coaches, we're gonna go in a different direction. In addition, that 6-week period, that extra long period, I think totally allows Commissioner Schreiber for what you're asking for, which is input from the whole board. Because as Commissioner Carswell explained, all of the materials, the videos from the interviews and any feedback from the committee will be shared with the full board. So there's plenty of time and opportunity for the full board to weigh in before and inform the decisions of the committee on each individual incumbent who is interested in moving forward. Obviously, there are going to be some incumbents who are not interested in moving forward. And one of the things I know Commissioner Carswell had mentioned, I think this is a great idea, is in those cases, this allows a time for an exit interview to learn from those outgoing incumbents and have that inform the process of picking new folks for the seats that they're vacating. Commissioner Carswell, I don't know if I got any of that right, but tell me if I'm wrong.
Nope, that sounds good.
Sweet.
Commissioner Brodsky, and then we'll come back to you, Commissioner Schreiber.
Thank you, Vice President Hecker. So let's put aside consternation for a second and let's take a look at the actual what's on the table at the moment. Here are some concerns that I may have that probably should be addressed. So if you look at this carefully, it says consider a motion to adopt a resolution on a policy for appointment. So the key words there are resolution and then a policy for appointments. What policy are you talking about? What policy? Hold on, I understand this here, but the policy, I'd like to see a more defined policy. I'd like to see it more set in clear, defined terms before you even get to the appointments. And then you talk about the various boards, committees, commissions, and councils. Well, I would suggest to you that one size doesn't fit all because one committee and one council may be different than another committee and may be different than another council. So it each has to be carefully crafted. Or if they're carefully crafted, do they apply separately? Or how do they apply? That's another analysis to take a look at. I don't know that one size fits all for this particular situation. And I also would suggest, and I haven't raised this yet, but I may do this sometime in the near future, that before you even get to a resolution on a policy for appointments, I think there's other policies and other considerations that need to be looked at for the board in its entirety that would actually apply to then, which what I would consider to be basically a sub-policy for the appointments to the various boards and committees. You need further structure. I would suggest that you need not just further structure, but there are other townships I'm aware of in Montgomery County that have other guidelines, and I'll just leave it at that actually kind of set forth what should and shouldn't be done. And I think that maybe some research should be done on that before we just willy-nilly jump into a policy, quote unquote, for appointments to the various boards. And I think that that's some of the issues I have with this. So I want to raise this. And maybe this is a bit premature. Maybe I think there needs to be in consideration of some further research or some further definition here before we actually get to a point, kind of like jumping into the middle of the pie before you get to the actual merits of it, if you will. But I would suggest to you that this kind of seems to be like in the middle of the process. And I realize there's a time urgency because certain boards come up at different times. Maybe there should be some standardizations about when those policies apply, to what board they apply to. Can you make that all, at one point, can you make that all, I guess, contiguous, or make that at least semi-contiguous so you don't have overlapping? There's a reason that these policies are put in these places, but it's just one piece of the puzzle, which I believe, or I would suggest, that needs further definition and further. It's just too broad, it's just too generic. The concept may be good, but you can't define this based on what we have before us here. So I would suggest that maybe this be held until it's further defined out, and then maybe come back to revisit the idea at a later time.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Commissioner Brodsky.
Thank you.
If I can speak to Commissioner Brodsky's point, I see what you're saying. In this particular case, this is actually a revision to a pretty defined, although I think at least some of us would agree, flawed policy that was adopted by, admittedly a fairly different board, a lot of, folks who aren't here anymore, and a lot of folks have joined the board since then. But, and that was the policy, as folks will recall, that's the policy that we awkwardly, and the awkwardness was entirely really my fault, awkwardly suspended in order to make sure that we were able to get those reappointments done at the end of last year for this year. And I know there were some thoughtful objections to that, and ones that I totally understand. But there has been a policy in place. It was, as I said, it was sort of awkwardly suspended, but now this is the revision to that policy. So we're not really sort of diving into the void here. I mean, really it's just revising a policy that's been in place for, Manager Manfredi, I don't know, 4
I think it was
years?
either 14 or 16 that you,
Yeah, so a couple of years.
originally, 14 or 16.
So if I may, I'm interested in your use, if I may have the floor.
You may.
Thank you. I don't mean to overstep the bounds. I apologize for that. So you use the word awkwardness. What awkwardness are you referring to? I'd like to know, but before you get to that, what is the other part of this where you decide that you reference policies that have been in place, or give me some specificity in terms of what policy that you think was awkwardly in place. So I'm kind of using your words at this point to figure out what you think what your idea is. Well, give me a specific. Give me a specific.
I'm totally ready to do that. So the awkwardness to which I was referring was, the policy, which is not so, I mean, there are differences. This is a definite revision to that policy. But that policy, the policy on these appointments was adopted, again, 2016 or whatever it was. The awkwardness to which I was referring was at the end of last year, I mean, in no small part because of the chaos of COVID and everything else, we ended up behind the 8 ball, where we had a bunch of people who a bunch of people people on these various volunteer boards and commissions and committees whose seats were up. And if they weren't reappointed, those committees were going to be shorthanded, including some very significant committees with hefty agendas facing them, like Planning Commission, I know was one of them. And so what was put forth was a motion, and again, I can't remember exactly when this was, maybe October, November, December, to suspend the previous policy and basically just reappoint these people.
When did that take place?
That was at the end of last year.
Suspension. I don't recall being part of that conversation.
It was. I remember. I mean, there are folks here folks here and who are attending remotely who objected to that suspension. And honestly, I saw their point then, and I see their point now. And as I said, I take responsibility for not having reached out to folks and explained the nature of why we were asking to temporarily suspend this policy, just to make sure that these crucial committees were fully populated. But again, the policy that we were suspending, and the policy that's still technically in place, has been in place since something like 2015 or 16.
So I'm still not clear on. I'm still not clear on, with specificity, what specific language is it that you want revised, and what specific language is it that you are saying that needs to be revised, and is it a one-size-fits-all, or does it apply to different commissions, does it apply to different boards? I mean, I'm not being clear, and I'm not hearing the example on this.
If I may, why don't we turn to Manager Manfredi to...
Absolutely.
Because he provided a brief overview in response to Commissioner Schreiber's question earlier. Maybe it's time to reiterate that.
So if I may first answer Commissioner Schreiber's question. This policy is for whatever the board decides. If the board decides to conduct the interviews themselves or create a special committee, the president would create. You asked about the members. The president appoints the committee, just as Commissioner Luker did, however many members the president selected. If you'd want to build into this who gets, whether it's the board or if a committee is created, this refers back to the policy on the boards and committees, which gives the authority to the president to appoint advisory committees, and then that committee falls under those rules. This is specific to, and this also answers Commissioner Brodsky's, this is very specific to what is the process when we have a vacancy that is created by a resignation or some other act, death or whatever it might be, or terms are expiring. So it's specific to those things, and I can just, so that everyone's clear, I'll run through that. It lists the various boards and commissions: Zoning Hearing Board, Planning Commission, Environmental Advisory Council, Shade Tree Commission, Human Relations Commission, Civil Service Commission, Economic Development Committee, Vacant Property Review Board, Industrial Development Authority, and the Library Board of Trustees. It then has a section on vacancies, and the section on vacancies is procedures for appointing a volunteer in the event of a vacancy occurring prior to the expiration of a term, and it sets forth process and procedure for that. There is a process within that section for all volunteer boards, commissions, committees, and councils except the Environmental Advisory Council and Shade Tree Commission. Why? Environmental Advisory Council and Shade Tree Commission have their own enabling legislation that sets forth what their role is. For example, in the past, the EAC would always have the ability to either appoint or recommend. And in the last few years, they weren't consulted to do that, and I believe Kaki would confirm that. So again, this is recognizing where they are with their own statutory authority, and that's why they're excluded and specifically identified. Then there's the second process for the Environmental Advisory Council and Shade Tree Commission, because they are separated and by separate resolution. And then we get into the procedures for appointing a volunteer to a board, commission, committee, or council. And you may ask, why board, commission, committee, and council? Because we have all of them. So it pertains to that of a vacancy occurring due to the expiration of a term. And then that's where Commissioner Schreiber was honed in on. And I think the concern that I'm hearing, and I don't want to speak for Commissioner Schreiber, is what happens if you have an incumbent who says they want to be reappointed, and you interview them in July, and then you're going to go out and advertise what is going to be communicated to that incumbent that you're going to go out and advertise for. Is that incumbent going to be told, thank you very much, we are now going to open it up to everyone else? How is that going to be communicated? And I guess the question is, if you want...
And having the person still be on that board for the next 6 months of their term, knowing that we're interviewing for other people, that's awkward. And it's, again, we had a policy in place before. I thought that policy was adequate, but I do like having a timeline. I think that's important so we don't have a problem like we've had previously where we get to the end of the year. It's not the timeline, it's the length of the timeline, and that seems problematic to me. And how it's going, that not everybody's being treated together the same way. And I understand why you want to, but I just think it's really awkward to interview somebody in July and then say, okay, well, I don't know, we're not real happy, maybe we'll open it up and interview other people in September, but we want you to continue until December. There's just something that doesn't flow correctly in all of that, to me.
And to address that, the previous policy addressed and was incorporated into with some minor changes. And again, that previous policy did have a timeline, but the policy was more condensed. It didn't start until later in the year. And I think, which is why the expansion of the timeline is being recommended here. But it did address a lot of the same things. In fact, this policy, rather than just rewriting a new policy or trying to just do a lot of striking, as you would see in a piece of legislation, we just incorporated that language, added new language, and adopted a new one. This way you're starting clean and fresh with other language that frankly may have been outdated. And there was a timeline in that as well.
But that timeline had everybody interviewed at the same time.
That is correct. That is correct. It just started later. Right. So what the points you're raising, this is precisely the time that you should be raising it, because if you want to change was proposed, now's the time to discuss it. It's a policy
Yeah, I mean,
decision, and
you know, certainly it's not up to me. I mean,
Yeah.
but I just see an awkwardness with that, and maybe if other people want to address that as well. I just have one other real quick question that I just want to make sure that this is okay, because, where did I put it? It says, this is in process number 1. It says, all members of the Board of Commissioners are welcome to attend interviews. Is that true, that they can be, that all 15 of us can be there?
if you create a committee and you have that committee, the attendance isn't the issue, it's whether or not you participate.
Okay.
And it's how it's advertised, and I guess, Lauren, you can correct me if I'm...
It would depend on how it was advertised and whether there's going to be any deliberation of township business, but if you're just observing, and if it is open to the public, then it doesn't matter. And I believe historically we have done these publicly, right? Or is that?
Well, we have not.
Okay.
Okay.
We have not.
But if you're just
Well,
observing.
I shouldn't say that. It has been both ways.
We can fine tune it to make sure that there's no violations of the Sunshine Act by anyone's attendance.
And so and is it considered like a personnel matter, it's not?
It is
If it's a
not, no.
volunteer board, so you'd have to look into that? Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Bowman?
I think Lori makes a good point, that if we are going to kind of assert our own authority in this area, as we are, then why don't we just, when people come on to one of these committees or boards, let them know that at the end, you are not automatically reappointed. You will go through an interview process. You know, you will have the experience of having served, so that certainly gives you that. But that, like Lori said, there really can only be one interview process towards the end. Because that's ridiculous to interview someone and then open the thing up. You know, of course the person's going to get the message, I think I'm on the way out. So, yeah, I think you just have to let them know. At the end, you will have to reapply to get reappointed. That's the way it is. And we will decide whether you're reappointed, and they should know that too. If there's been any misunderstanding heretofore, then we're here to clear it up. And that's what this policy will do.
Thank you, Commissioner Bowman.
Vice President Hecker?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Good evening.
Good evening. How are you? That's okay if we want to go in that direction. I will say my own experience with volunteer boards has been not that, where that you are on a board and then at the end you just are told go back to start and get in line with everybody else. There's usually, and I understand the spirit, I think, of what's in here, which is let's get a head start on the people, both for their own sake as existing volunteers, and also so we can begin to have a conversation about whether the makeup of the board is the right makeup of the board. And if it's not, and we want to go in a different direction, we've got 6 months worth of time to have the right conversation in a respectful manner, to interview that person. The question that I have in all of that is, and related to Commissioner Schreiber's points, is when we interview someone 6 months before the end of the term, is the goal to interview them early and then weigh that interview with the other people that we will then interview months later? Or is it to interview them and make a decision so that we then have clarity about the number of open slots that we're looking to fill? And that number of slots is 3 or 2, depending on whether we reappoint. So are we interviewing those people 6 months ahead of time to make a decision about their reappointment at that time? If so, I'm okay with that. I do think it's awkward, as Commissioner Schreiber was pointing out, that we would interview them and then they would be weighed against something that happened months later. So that's where I am in all this. And my understanding, just from the basic governance of volunteer boards, is that you're usually looked at for reappointment, not necessarily with the general pool of applicants, but on your own merits and whether or not they want to have you again.
It's a great point that was considered when this was being written, and the reason it's silent as to whether or not you make a decision on those people who are in the category of incumbents who have been interviewed prior to July 31st is
to give us the flexibility.
To determine how you want to proceed.
Yeah.
What this is saying, though, so So let's just say hypothetically, we take those two people again, and a committee, an ad hoc committee is created. That committee does in fact do all of the interviews, and they reach a conclusion that these people are to be retained. Well, the next discussion is going to be, what do we want to do? You've already set forth a policy that says we're going to go outside and advertise beyond these incumbents. Are they told that we are going to be advertising to give everyone else a chance, but we wanted to give you the first opportunity? I think what I'm hearing is that because of the silence in this, Commissioner Schreiber has questions about how's that going to actually work. And I think it deserves discussion. And the other concern I know that Commissioner Carswell had is, this is July. If this gets moved to the August meeting, it will be at least September. If a special committee is created, it would be August, perhaps September or October that interviews are conducted. So this policy may not actually apply in 2021. This is really going to take more effect in 2022.
I think by default it won't. I mean, given
Correct.
that we're here on July 8th.
That's correct.
So I think this, yeah.
So I guess what I'm asking is, do you want to discuss further the concerns that have been raised about that period that Commissioner Bowl and Commissioner Schreiber just addressed? Do you want to leave it open and address it at the time after those interviews are conducted? I mean, these are all policy questions that you'll have to consider.
Right. I mean, what I'm hearing is a difference of opinion on that matter with a desire to want to discuss that further. I mean, that's what I've heard come across this evening. I mean, my own perspective is I do think having a longer timeline allows us to get it done. I mean, I think this has been something historically in my time on the board. It always felt like something that was rushed at the end, and I think you don't want that because that's not fair to the applicants. And it's, on the other hand, you don't want somebody who figuring out in June that we don't want them around anymore and have 6 months to be disaffected by that, and I think that could impair the performance of the particular volunteer board or commission, and I think there's a balancing act there. I don't know what the right answer is, but I think the questions that have been raised here are important ones.
And candidly, Vice President Hecker, that did occur not that long ago.
Indeed.
And can I just
President Hecker.
quickly add, and a further
No, go ahead. Commissioner Myers, then we're going to go to Commissioner Carswell.
a further complication that if in a committee you have 3 incumbents that are due, and the interviewing committee selects 2 out of the 3. It's not, there is no easy answer.
No.
But that's not something I won't be here, but I don't think you're going to want to see that either.
Understood. Commissioner Carswell?
You'd like to?
I'm sorry, I wasn't able to hear Commissioner Myers' comment. Can she repeat that again?
Would you mind repeating your comment?
I'm sorry?
Would you mind repeating your comment? Commissioner Carswell was not able to hear what you had just said.
And Jessica, you can't hear me, and I can't hear you. So we're great.
You're going to get along just fine.
I always like to play devil's advocate, and I added the complication that if you, in one committee, you had 3 incumbents that were to be interviewed by whatever the subcommittee is, and you only select 2 of them, or 1 of them, and then you go on to advertise or interview for 1 or 2 spots out of the 3. I think that's going to create really problems and real hard feelings.
Agree. Commissioner Carswell, and then Commissioner Rothman would also like to speak following Commissioner Carswell.
All right, I changed my audio jack on this end. Is it better for you all?
You sound great.
Okay, I'm sorry. I will be back tomorrow late, so I will be back for all our future meetings. A big part of this timeline is trying to accommodate a lot of things. So we're trying to accommodate volunteers responding to the township's office in letting us know. I spoke candidly with Terry, and sometimes we have to do a little bit of follow-up to make sure people understand that their term is up and, you know, are you interested in continuing? So we need time for people to respond. We need time to get interviews scheduled. Let's be for this committee don't share either, and so that process is complicated. And I also think it's really important to respect those involved. And so I share some of the concern about awkwardness. I don't want someone to sit out there wondering what's going on. What Commissioner Myers just said, I don't want that to happen. I want to have very clear communications with everyone involved where they sit, because I don't think it's fair to anybody who has served as a volunteer in our community to be wondering what on earth is going on for a length of time. But the other thing that's part of this timeline is accommodating our meeting schedule, because at the end of the day, we have to approve people, and there's distance between our committee of the whole and our Board of Commissioners meeting. And ideally, we're not making this decision in December. We're able to make it a little bit advance of that, so that, like what happened 2 years ago, when we didn't have enough people to fill all open seats, we were ready to start the process around 2 or whatever was necessary. Sadly, that can happen if we don't do a really good job of recruitment. So, I share all of the concerns in trying to figure out how to magically make all of the different pieces of this work and line up. But my goal in making the adjustment to the existing policy was to add a respectful communication process so that our volunteers understand what's going on and feel communicated with in a timely manner.
Thank you, Commissioner Carswell. Commissioner Rothman?
I don't know if you guys can hear me. I'm going to be really quick. I think that it's important that we do look at interviewing people, even if they're serving, and just communicate to them whatever the process is that we come up with here. You know, if someone's on a board for 5 years, for example, the analogy that Jess made was that we are, you know, some of them are serving longer terms than us, and obviously we're called upon by the public every 4 years to see if we've earned the right to continue serving in our role. And I think it's important that we don't just, you know, pass people through, but again, there's been a lot of good points about not making people squirm. These people are to be, you know, applauded for their volunteer service. But I do think we need to figure something out, because again, one of the things that we know, getting us together when we're trying to do the meetings and the interviews is hard. We don't want to do this in a period of time where it's a 3-week window or something when people are getting ready for their year end at their jobs and can't take the time to come to an interview, because then we're missing out on some of the best prospects that would have otherwise been available to us. So I think it's important that we figure something out here. I don't think that we've come to a solution tonight as to what that exactly looks like, but the fact that we're talking about it will indeed make it better for all of us. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Rothman. Other comments or questions? President Spinelli.
One last, I know and respect that Commissioner Myers likes to play devil's advocate. I guess this is sort of a devil's advocate comment, and this really isn't necessarily intended to sway anybody, but a thing to think about with regard to that issue of someone who is basically a lame duck. It's been made clear to them that, you know, those last couple of months, weeks, whatever, on that volunteer board and commission that are their last, and they are being, you know, they're going to get the gold watch at the end of that. In theory, and this is an imperfect analogy, but in theory, that's something that could happen to any of us through the political process. In theory, you know, a commissioner could lose in a general election, or in fact, even in a primary. The expectation is you're still an adult who's committed to, who's committed to this responsibility, and you will, with dignity and a high mind, finish out your term. So ideally, it would be nice if we could expect that of the folks on these commissions. Again, not the same thing, and I know you can't expect that, but just wanted to throw that out there. Thank you.
Just one more point, and it
Certainly.
doesn't answer anything tonight, but maybe moving forward, and I'll use the term for all new hires, that you could, for these boards, that you consider term limits. Because I know that in the past, and I know that Commissioner Schreiber has also been concerned that sometimes the incumbents have been in, not too long, but in very long, and it doesn't give the committee a chance for some new energy, and so that maybe term limits, a generous term limit would end that. Because in the past, whenever there was an incumbent that wanted to stay on, that was just automatic. And the only things that we interviewed for were truly open seats.
True vacancies, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think there's some merit to that. So there's been wide-ranging discussion. Commissioner Schreiber, did you have another comment?
No, I was just going to say, whatever we decide to do with this
Yep.
tonight, and it's not going to be for this year, we still have to come up with what we're going to do for this year. So if we're going to do a timeline, maybe we can start earlier with the current rules that are in place, because this isn't going to go in place in time anyway, but start it a little bit earlier so that we don't have that problem at the end where it's, December 31st and our boards are expiring.
Yeah.
So I think we need to look at both what we're going to do with this, but also what we're going to do for this year.
Commissioner Behe.
Just to echo Commissioner Schreiber's comments, if we are going to deliberate this further, it would be completely unacceptable to deviate from the existing policy for a second year in a row. So I would expect that there would be interviews one way or the other.
Understood. Commissioner Brodsky.
Commissioner Schreiber, thank you. Thank you for raising the issue. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other comments or questions?
Where is this going from?
Well, I think that's the next step, because the way this was written was to consider there was no motion made, and so the floor is open for some sort of direction. And I'm going to await my colleagues to
Is this something that we
edify
would
me
send to
in the
committee?
words.
We don't seem to send anything to committee, but is this something we should send to committee, or?
In terms of direction, I think it would be helpful, if we're not going to do anything with this tonight, you have the policy in front of you. What I might suggest is you bring it back next month, and that if each commissioner can forward any thoughts or comments once they've reviewed this, that would be helpful. And then if you decide to put it in committee, because you're looking at August.
Oh, we don't have any committees, that's right.
This really isn't going to, well, good point. But the point I'm trying to make is, this comes back to, if you have a committee of the whole in August, because there are typically not committee meetings in August, if you have this in August and it comes back in August, it would be helpful to vet some of these ideas and thoughts and try to incorporate it in so you have something to consider. To your point, we'll just proceed. This really wasn't going to, if the timeline got adopted, we're already into the June and July.
Right.
So it's, you have time because the discussion is so early. I would just bring it back. I would just bring it back to you all again.
Is now exiting.
It would be helpful to me to know what your thoughts are, to put together some errata sheet or something to vet.
I'd like to suggest that we do have a committee of the whole in August, since it is the same night as a Board of Commissioners meeting. We're out, we're here. It's going to be a little longer, but I'm sure that the manager will do everything possible to make it as short an agenda as he can.
Try.
But if you're here, you're here.
Okay, so there's been a suggestion. We don't have a formal motion as of yet to do something, so I think if we do want to...
I move that we move this to the committee of the whole for next month.
There's a motion.
Second.
There's a
Second.
motion on the floor, and it's been seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, the matter will move forward to the Committee of the Whole meeting next month. Now, before we adjourn, I did mention at the beginning of the meeting that because of the confusion about the call-in option, that if there were any residents who wanted to make comments that weren't able to do so, we would have that. I don't see anybody here in attendance, but I'm aware that somebody had contacted Commissioner Thompson with something that they would like to be offered into the record, so I'm going to ask Commissioner Thompson to do that now.
Thank you, Commissioner Hecker. Public comment from Patrick Kucharski of the 600 block of Monroe. Mr. Kucharski writes,
Is now joining.
Commissioners, please look into massage establishments in your wards. The other night, I made a phone call to one in Keswick, and it was after hours. A lady offered to open up for me if I just called. Clearly, this lady seems to live in this facility. The ordinance regulates people living in there and operating hours. Please keep landlords accountable. Pennsylvania state laws state that anyone knowingly benefits financially or receives anything of value from any act that facilitates trafficking activity is liable for punitive and treble damages. The landlords at Jinlon were advised that women live in their prostitution is going on and trafficking is going on. They should have reported this when neighbors urged them to do so. Mr. Kucharski follows up stating that he will email each commissioner and give them a list of concerning issues I found in other wards concerning signs of trafficking. And that's all.
Thank you. While that wasn't specific to this agenda, Commissioner Thompson didn't get that from the resident in time before the board meeting ended, so we just allowed that to move forward. With that, Well, what I said, Kaki, was that we would afford somebody the opportunity to speak if they weren't here for the initial public comment. But you've endured the entire meeting, and if there's something you would like to say, then, okay, then feel free.
I might have for the last issue we were talking about, I think I can offer a good suggestion. I mean, I think the most important thing is that you want to get the best possible people. That's really what it's about, serving on these commissions. And my understanding right now is when it comes time to be appointed, at the same time that the incumbents are informed, you also open up to the community. And I think that's a really good process. You know, it shouldn't be an automatic just because I've been on that I'm automatically passed through. And you may also look at what are the needs? You know, for instance, I'll give you a very simple need. If you wanted on the EAC, you were getting a lot of constituents saying we need to have more pollinator gardens. We may not have a pollinator specialist on our EAC, or you're getting feedback about you want somebody who knows about building commissioning and retro commissioning, whatever the needs are, because you set policies. And so, you know, if someone's passed over, that's great, because it's really important that you're responsive to your constituents. So I think the process that you have now is good in that whenever there's an opening, you always advertise to your constituents, and I don't want to see anybody who's already served be automatically assuming or pass. I don't think they should be favored, is what I'm saying. You want to get the best possible people. So I think that's a solution for you guys, you know, and with all these committees or commissions, you always want to look at a skill set, like what's lacking, what do you not have that's on there, and this is a great opportunity to do it. So I'm not sure that this is answering it. I understand what you were saying, Commissioner Schreiber. It shouldn't be an awkwardness. It should really be open 100% to if there are better people out there in the community than the current people up, why should the current people up get any favoritism? It should be an open process that you get to, you know, bring them on in according to the needs that you see from your constituents. I just also wanted to share that I see there is, the way this is written, the Environmental Advisory Council, I think there's an opportunity for improvement. It says that we're stewards of the township's environment. We actually are policy advisors from Act 148 of the, and so, you know, you have it for the Shade Tree Commission, but I would like to see that be rewritten. I think that could be improved upon. And thank you very much.
Yep. Thank you for your comments and your suggestion. With that, colleagues, we are adjourned.